Hey, I hear you're interested in the board game Diplomacy. Let's talk a little bit about it. First, what is Diplomacy? Well, it's a board game, mostly. It was designed by a board game company, Avalon Hill, and then adapted into an online game. It is a turn-based strategy game in which you play as one of the major powers of pre-World War I Europe. Here are the powers. And your goal in the game is to take over the entire continent of Europe. Diplomacy is a strategy game of deceit. You have to use in-game communications to talk to your opponents because the whole game is about making and breaking alliances. You make treaties, make agreements, make demilitarized zones, and then break them, stab them in the back, destroy them. Being isolated and not talking to anybody will probably not help you win unless you know what you're doing and it is a very careful strategy of yours. Now let's talk about the basics of the game. In the game, we have a map. It looks like this. Each power is a different color on the map. And you can see there are different colored shaded regions here. Each one's a different power. The map is divided into provinces, also called territories sometimes. Some provinces like this one are water, or this one. Some provinces are entirely inland, like this one, and some are on a coast, like that, or that. A coastal province is just any land province that's next to a body of water. There are 34 supply centers across the entire map. They're marked with little icons like this, or like this. They're all over. Each power will start with 3 or 4 inside their borders at the beginning of the game. These are called your home centers, and that's important to remember for later. You can see Italy has 3 of them right here. The objective of the game is to control 18 of the supply centers on the board. If you control 18, you win. You can also call a draw, but that's boring. The basis of the game is the military unit. These are like your pieces. Each military unit can move around and are essentially your agents on the ground to realizing the orders that you are executing in the game. There are 2 types of military units: armies, which are land units, and fleets, which are water units. An army can move to any land province, and a fleet can move to any water or near water province. Both of these include coasts, so a coast can hold an army or a fleet. Now, only one unit can be in a province at a time. No unit is stronger than any other unit because every military unit has a force of 1. Remember, this isn't a military game, this is a strategy game. Units can combine their force with a type of order called a support order. And then when one unit fights another, the one with the most combined force wins. But every unit individually, remember, has a force of 1. Now, let's talk about the sequence of play, basically how to play the game. The game is divided up into years and phases. It operates on a basis of turns, which occur in a game year. The first game year is 1901, followed by 1902, and so on. And play in Diplomacy is simultaneous. So everybody takes their turn at the exact same time. In Diplomacy, each year has 5 phases. The phases are spring orders, retreats, fall orders, retreats, and then builds. I have a side panel here that's going to stay here for a while so that you can always keep track of this because this is super important. The retreat and build phases are going to be automatically skipped by the game if no player has anything to do during them, and we'll talk more about each phase in just a sec. Every phase, you're going to enter your orders secretly. No one else will be able to see what you are ordering your troops to do. And then, at the end of the phase, all orders across the entire board are revealed at the exact same time and are executed. Now let's talk about the spring orders phase. You can see that it is right up here at the top of your chart. Every orders phase, you can give orders to every single one of your units. Even if you have 3 or 20, you're going to order every single one each orders phase. You can give one of 4 orders. And remember, orders is just a word like a command. You got to tell the armies and fleets what to do. You are their leader. The first one is holding in place. This basically means they're not moving. They're going to stand still and wait for the next turn to move. The other one is called a move order, where they can move to any adjacent province. Keep in mind that there are limits like what province each unit type can occupy. For example, a boat cannot move to an inland property because there's no water there, and an army cannot move to a water property because they can't swim. And armies on a coast can move to a non-adjacent coast via a convoy, and we'll talk more about convoys in a second. The third type is called the support. So this will allow one unit to support another but still stay in the same place that it is. Remember, each unit by default has 1 military power force. You can change this by having units support others. A unit can only support an action in an adjacent province to which it itself could have moved. Keep that in mind. And then the last one is called a convoy. It's basically like an aircraft carrier. It allows you to take an army from one beach and ship it at light speed over the water to another beach. It can help a coastal army move to another coast. Convoys are cool because they can be 1 fleet or they can be like 3 fleets all at once, and it'll still move from one coast to another in 1 turn as long as you do it correctly. And keep in mind that only fleets that are in the water can execute a convoy. A fleet that is in a coastal province cannot. And as a reminder, fleet means boat. The next thing about the spring orders phase is that you can support and convoy another power's units. You can make alliances and treaties, remember, and part of that could be helping other units move or hold. And one of the rules is that you cannot support a unit to hold if that unit intends to move. Basically, every time you start putting in an order to support, it's going to ask whether you're supporting this unit to stay still or you're supporting it to move. Simply, you can't help somebody stay still if they plan on traveling. Now, we're going to talk about order resolution. This actually falls right here on this chart in between spring orders and retreats. So this is not one of your phases. This is not a turn that you will take. Because order resolution, you may also hear the word adjudication, is when the game engine itself takes every order in the game and resolves it to tell you what happened the last turn. Resolution only happens once every single player submits their orders, and this is when all of their orders are also revealed to everybody in the game. Remember, this is not something that you will do, it is how the game resolves the orders that you give. And it is very important because you have to understand what your actions will result in for next turn. So the first rule about order resolution is that units of equal force ordered to move to the same place will bounce. I like to imagine a move as a jump. So if you're moving from one town to the next, one province to the next, you jump over the border and land in the other town. If 2 units, whether they're friendly or enemies or anything, try to move to the same one and they have the same force, they're going to hit each other midair and will bounce off and are going to go back to where they started. If one of them has a greater force than the other, it will win and it'll advance. And you may remember you can achieve this with a support. You'll notice here that every time I talk about an order, I have it in all caps, so you can realize that this is an order that you will give to your troops and not something that the game decides for you. If 2 units of equal force are ordered to move to each other's province, so if one of them is in Picardy and one of them is in some other Italian province, and they try to swap places, they will not swap places. Like I said, imagine them jumping between one and the other. They will hit each other mid-air, and they will bounce off, and they will not swap. If one of them has greater force, of course, it will advance. And this only applies to swaps where you are moving to each other's province. That means that you can have 3 units rotate around each other. If a unit is ordered to move, regardless of where it is, and it ends up bouncing, the game helps you out a little bit by keeping a force of 1 for you to defend yourself, if you need to, in the province where you start. So let's say you intend to move from one province to a nearby province, and it doesn't work and you bounce, you're back where you started. If another player in the game tries to attack that, you are still there because you bounced, and you automatically have a force of 1 to defend yourself. That way you're not automatically destroyed, and we'll talk more about that in just a sec. So a unit can only be forced out of its province, which is called dislodged. That word is important, you'll hear it a lot. Dislodged means you are forced out of the province you're in if it is experiencing greater force than the unit plus all support it is receiving to hold. So what that means is, if a unit is ordered to hold and it has one other unit supporting it, that means it has a total force of 2. So it can only be dislodged by a unit with 2 of its own support, which would give it a total force of 3. That's 1 attacking unit plus 2 of its additional supports. That'll give it a total force of 3, or greater. If they attack with the same force, whether that's 1, 2, 3, any other number, they will bounce. Another way to say that is that a unit ordered to move with 2 support will dislodge a unit ordered to hold with 1 support. But if they have the same, you will not be able to do a dislodge. Another important thing about support is that it gets cut if the unit with the support order gets attacked. So if I'm helping my friend in a nearby province and I get attacked, I'm no longer able to help them. The support that I intended to provide to them gets cut, it does not count, and it does not add to the other unit's force. You can never, regardless of how hard you try, dislodge or cut support of your own units. If you do a move that would result in that, it will never result in that. And if there is a unit in a province where a bounce occurred, it does not get dislodged. So imagine again the jumping. I have 3 provinces right next to each other. If someone from the first province and someone from the third province try to both enter the second that's in the middle, and there is a unit there, they will bounce off of each other if they have equal force. But you can imagine that bounce as occurring above the second province. The unit underneath is totally unaffected. And then, if a fleet doing a convoy order gets dislodged, the entire convoy is disrupted. The army doesn't go anywhere. But if it just gets attacked and with not dislodged, then you are totally good. And we are now in the retreats phase. So you can see we are here on our little chart. The retreats phase is where you deal with dislodged units. So any dislodged unit must either retreat to a vacant province that it could otherwise have moved to, or has to be destroyed. An army can never retreat via a convoy, and a unit cannot retreat to a province where a bounce occurred or that the attack that made them be dislodged came from. If there's no legal retreat option for a unit that gets dislodged, it is automatically destroyed. And if 2 units try to retreat to the same province, they are both destroyed. Now, season change. This is right here. This, again, because it's between 2 phases, isn't something that you have to interact with. This is just when the seasons change from spring to fall. You won't be notified that this happens because it has no effect on the gameplay. And then we've got fall orders. So we are now down here on our chart. Fall orders, put simply, is identical to spring orders. If you remember how that works, you'll remember how this works. And then we have the retreats phase again. Right down here, fall retreats is identical to spring retreats. After that, we go straight into builds. So you can see builds is at the very bottom of our phase. This is the end of our game year. This is when supply centers matter. So you remember earlier in the presentation, we talked about supply centers and how to get them and why getting them matters. You gain control of a supply center if you occupy it at the end of the fall retreats phase. So you've made your orders, you've moved into town, but maybe you got displaced. Maybe you got dislodged is the word. So you have to retreat out. If you don't own it right here, and this time you don't get the supply center. But if you do, it will remain yours until somebody else gains control of it. You don't have to stay in that property for it to be yours. The important fact about supply centers is that for every supply center you control, you can have 1 unit on the board. More supply centers, more units. During this phase, the builds phase, if you are short units because you have gained more supply centers recently, you have the option of building new ones, but you don't have to accept that. You may only build new units in your unoccupied home centers. And as a reminder, home centers are the supply centers that you started with in your area at the beginning of the game in 1901. If you have too many units, for example, because you lost a supply center, you are required to disband the excess units, so it will simply destroy them, and you will get to choose which ones. And then the new year happens. Rinse and repeat. It's the exact same thing. The game is expected to continue for many years. Let's recap. This is the map. The map is very important. Your goal is to move your units around the board, trying to take over other supply centers. Your job is to make decisions each phase, and they're listed here again, that will impact your progression through this game. And some important notes. Don't get it wrong. The game says that you are allowed to submit illegal orders. This means that you can ask an army on one side of the map to move all the way to the other side of the map, even though the game's rules say you can only move to an adjacent province. The game will allow you to complete one of your turns, even if every single order you entered is illegal. But during order resolution, the game engine will start calculating what's going on, and it will reject your illegal orders. It can detect them, and it will pick for you that you have wanted to hold those units. Thus, if you place an illegal order, it will be discarded after you have the chance to fix it. So be very careful to put in your orders correctly. You're allowed to ask questions, because if you get it wrong, it will choose for you, and you won't be able to fix it until next turn comes around. And as a little bit of shame, everybody's going to see that you did it wrong, because on the order report it's going to show illegal order was replaced with a hold order. And remember, this is not a military game. It is a strategy game. You must talk to other powers in the game to be successful. You are expected to form alliances, make treaties, and establish common ground. And you are also expected to break alliances, declare war, violate the treaties, and infringe upon the rights of the unassuming. There is a reason the game is called Backstabber. Thank you for watching. This is the end of my presentation. Now, let's see you in the game.